I have a question for you to start things off today, and I want you to be honest.
Okay.
Have you ever let a moment pass you by? I mean, a really, really huge moment, because you were just too afraid to ruin a perfect friendship.
Hmm.
You know that feeling? You're right on the edge of something life-changing,
Yeah.
but you step back because safety just feels better than the risk.
It's the universal paralysis of what if, isn't
Ethan.
it? I mean, that's arguably one of the most common human experiences.
It has to be. And that paralysis is the heartbeat of today's deep dive. We're looking at a short story called For the Love Never Spoken.
Right.
Now, I have to warn you right up front, if you're in the mood for a happy-go-lucky, everything works out rom-com, you might want to brace yourself.
Oh, yeah.
This story explores what the text calls the quiet ache of what could have been. It's atmospheric, it's beautiful, and honestly, it wrecked me a little bit.
It's heavy.
Mm.
But our mission today isn't just to, you know, retell a sad romance or make everyone cry. We want to really unpack the psychology of silence here. We have this fascinating interplay between art and music as communication. And ultimately, we need to look at the heavy price we pay when we leave our feelings unexpressed.
So let's get into the world of the story. The atmosphere here is practically a third character.
Absolutely.
We're dropped into this quaint coastal town. I'm picturing rugged beauty, gray skies, cliffs towering above these crashing waves. The text says it's a place where the sea murmurs age-old secrets.
Which is such a telling description right from the start. The environment itself is keeping secrets, mirroring exactly what the characters are doing.
Mm.
It sets the stage for suppression.
And reading this, I just wanted to reach through the page and shake them. You have these two people, clearly soulmates, yet they're just stuck. It's so frustrating, but also, I don't know, it felt unpredictably familiar. I think most of us have been there.
We have. And to understand why they're stuck, we have to look at who they are. Let's start with the characters, because their identities are so crucial to how they communicate. Or, well, don't.
Right.
First, you have Mira.
Mira, the artist. I loved how she's introduced. There's that line about her having curls kissed by salt and fingers stained with paint.
Yeah.
It felt like she wasn't just watching the ocean, but almost like she belonged to it, you know? Like she was elemental.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
She's not a tourist. She's part of the landscape. She spends her mornings on the cliffs, capturing the ocean's rhythm on canvas. She's an observer, trying to freeze moments in time.
And then there's Theo, the violinist. He's described as having stormy gray eyes, which I felt was maybe a little on the nose, but it works.
It matches the weather, certainly. But while Mira is visual, Theo is auditory. His music is described as intertwining with the salty air, swirling with the wind.
So you have these two people occupying the exact same space, but interpreting it through totally different mediums.
Exactly.
There's a specific line in the text that contrasts them. It says, Mira found color in chaos, which is such a cool way to describe a painter.
Right?
But then it says, Theo made the wind feel soft.
That distinction is vital. Think about the psychology of those art forms. Mira is taking the chaotic energy of the sea and giving it form, structure, permanence on a canvas. Theo is taking the harshness of the elements, the wind, and softening it with melody. But music is temporal. It happens and then it's gone. Painting remains. That dynamic plays out later.
But they aren't just doing this in isolation. They're doing it together on these cliffs. The story says their bond was quiet yet undeniable.
This is key. The text explicitly says Mira sensed him in the silence between her brushstrokes.
And Theo discovered her in the pauses of his music.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly romantic, but also, isn't it a bit convenient?
How so?
Well, it's safe, isn't it? If the intimacy lives in the silence or in the pauses, then you never actually have to say anything. You can feel connected without ever taking the risk.
That is the crux of the issue. Their art became a proxy for speech. They were communicating fluently through their creativity. They could pour all this love and longing into a painting or a song, which is a safe container.
So they could be vulnerable without the direct risk of confrontation.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that risk, because the story tells us exactly what they were afraid of. It wasn't just general nervousness. Mira's fear was that confessing might shatter the precious connection they already had.
This is a classic example of what psychologists might call loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
Basically, the pain of losing something we already have feels about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something new. Mira valued the status quo, that friendship on the cliff, so much that the potential gain wasn't worth the risk of losing it. She chose safety.
That makes sense. But then there's Theo. His fear hit me a little harder. The text says he dreaded rejection, but specifically he was worried he might love her more than she could ever love him.
That's a deeply insecure and very human fear, the fear of inequality.
But isn't that a little selfish to just assume she can't love him as much?
It could be. But think of it from a vulnerability perspective. He wasn't just afraid she'd say no. He was afraid of being exposed as the more invested one. There's a deep shame associated with that unrequited intensity.
So speaking it aloud might create a power imbalance that would be humiliating for him.
Precisely.
So, because of these fears, Mira holding on, Theo fearing the imbalance, they spend years in this stalemate. They talk about art, life, and the stars, but they just circle around the one thing that actually matters.
It's the elephant on the cliffside. And they prioritize safety over the potential for happiness. And usually in these stories, something has to break that tension.
And something does. We get the catalyst. The text sets the scene so perfectly. It's an autumn evening. The sky is blazing with purples and reds. A storm is surging. The atmosphere is literally charging up.
The external weather is mirroring the internal pressure. It's a classic device, but it works. Everything is at a breaking point.
And Theo breaks the pattern, sort of. He lifts his violin and plays a melody that the story says needed no words. It's described as haunting and painful.
This is his confession. He's using his language music to say everything he's been holding back. He's bypassing his fear of words.
And it seems to work. Mira is standing there, frozen. The text says the music is unraveling her. The truth is bubbling to the surface. She's ready. Her lips are parting. It's happening.
And then the environment intervenes.
The rain starts, sharp and unexpected.
And this is the pivotal moment, the shift from a spiritual, emotional connection to this sudden physical scrambling. The spell is broken.
Theo grabs her hand, without a word, I might add, and they run to this old lighthouse with a rusted roof, and they're just standing there drenched and breathless.
Think about the tension in that space. The story says the moment was tangible. The energy was right there, adrenaline pumping close together. This was it. This was the moment.
But they don't do anything. The moment is there, and then poof, it's gone.
This is what we call a sliding doors moment.
A sliding doors moment.
It's a concept from an old movie, but it's about that split second where one tiny decision branches your life into two completely different timelines.
Yeah.
In one, they kiss. In the other, they don't. And their entire futures diverge.
Why didn't they just do it? They were right there.
Because the rain gave them an out. When the spiritual tension got too high, the physical distraction of the storm let them retreat back into safety. It gave them an excuse to laugh it off, shiver, worry about the violin.
So they let the chaos of the weather drown out the clarity of the moment.
They did.
Ugh, that is so frustrating. They're standing under a rusted roof, probably looking at each other, and they just let it go.
And that failure to act dictates the rest of their lives.
I want to pause on what happens right after this, though, because the story jumps forward, but you just know the next morning must have been agonizing.
Oh, absolutely. The morning after a moment like that is filled with what we call ambiguous loss. Did something almost happen? Or did I imagine it? If I bring it up now, do I look crazy?
So they probably retreated even further into their friendship roles.
Right. Just to cover up the awkwardness. And that retreat turns into a drift. There's no big fight. They just center.
Moves to the city. Her art ends up in galleries. Theo travels the globe, playing in grand halls.
They both get what they wanted, ostensibly. But look at the geography. Mira goes to the city, crowded, busy. Theo goes to the globe, vast, wandering. The physical distance just mirrors the emotional distance they created that night.
But they keep in touch. The story says they exchanged safe messages, sweet check-ins, and familiar jokes.
And that is the tragedy of it, isn't it? Safe messages. It's what psychologists call relational maintenance. You keep the connection on life support because the idea of the person is safer than the reality of them.
It's like keeping a door just slightly ajar.
Exactly. It stays open just enough so you don't have to grieve the loss, but it's never open enough to actually walk through and be vulnerable.
So they settled for being acquaintances with history.
A slow fade. It's an erosion of possibility.
So years go by, and then we get the return. Mira comes back to the town. It's a cloudy afternoon, and the text describes her heart as being heavier than her luggage.
She's carrying the weight of all that unsaid time. And notice, she goes right back to the source. She goes back to the cliff.
And she finds something. Leaning against the rock where she used to sit is a painting. Now, wait a minute. Mira is the painter. Theo is the musician. But she finds a painting.
This is the supreme irony of the story. Throughout their relationship, Mira spoke in images and Theo spoke in sound. But in his final act of communication, Theo adopts her language. He leaves a painting.
And it's a portrait of Mira. She's gazing out at the ocean as if waiting for someone.
He captured her. He really saw her. All those years, she thought he was just looking at the sea, but he was looking at her, looking at the sea. He's validating her perspective, but through his own lens.
And by using her medium, he's making his feelings permanent. It's not a song that fades into the wind.
Exactly. He's leaving a mark that stays.
And then the note. There's an inscription at the bottom of the painting. For the one I never had the courage to love.
That line destroys me every time.
It's devastating. For the one I never had the courage to love. Mira weeps, obviously. But the text tells us it's too late. Theo has moved on, or faded away like the tide.
It's ambiguous whether he's died or just left for good, but effectively he's gone from her life. The opportunity is dead.
And she's left with this painting, a permanent monument to a conversation that never happened.
And let's look at the psychology of that note. He finally admitted the truth. I never had the courage. He didn't say, for the one who didn't love me back.
Yeah.
He took responsibility for his own silence. He realized, too late, the barrier wasn't her. It was his own fear.
So what does this all mean? The text has a very explicit moral at the end. It says, unspoken love is still love, but it resides in the quiet ache of what could have been.
And then that final line, the waves will carry your silence, but not your regrets.
Oof, not your regrets. That hits hard.
It distinguishes between the act of staying silent and the internal consequence of it. The world, the waves, doesn't care if you stay quiet. Life goes on, but you have to carry the regret. The environment won't absorb that for you.
It really brings us to a comparison between regret and rejection. We talked about Theo's fear of rejection earlier.
And think of it this way. Rejection is like a broken bone. It's acute pain, it stings, it burns, it's agonizing in the moment. But then you set it, you grieve, and it heals. It's a closed loop. You get an answer.
That regret.
Regret is like arthritis. It's a chronic, dull ache that flares up when it rains. It doesn't have an endpoint because the what if never dies. By avoiding the sharp pain of rejection, they both sentence themselves to the dull, lifelong ache of regret.
That is a powerful distinction. They tried to avoid pain, but they just traded one type of pain for a much worse, longer-lasting one.
They bought safety at the price of fulfillment. And the painting on the cliff is the receipt for that transaction. A beautiful but tragic object.
It makes you think about the lighthouse moment again. If they had just spoken then under that rusted roof, even if it went badly.
Even if it went badly. Even if she said, Theo, I don't feel that way. Then he would have known. He wouldn't be leaving a note years later about lacking courage. He would have had the courage and you would have had closure.
And Mira wouldn't be standing there with a heart heavier than her luggage. She would have known.
Silence seems like the passive do-nothing option. But this story shows us that silence is an active choice. It's an action with massive consequences. It builds walls. It creates distance. And eventually it solidifies into regret.
Reminds me of the sea murmuring age-old secrets. It's like the sea has seen this happen a million times before.
It likely has. The human tendency to protect our egos is timeless. We build fortresses around our hearts to keep out the pain, but those same fortresses keep out the love.
And the irony that they were artists. They spent their lives expressing deep truths about the world, about chaos and wind and rhythm, but couldn't express the simple truth of their own hearts.
It highlights that creative courage is very different from emotional courage. You can be brave on a canvas or brave on a stage, but a coward in a conversation.
Brave on a stage, but a coward in a conversation. That is going to stick with me.
It's the tragedy of Theo. He could play the most vulnerable melody in a grand hall, but he couldn't tell the woman standing next to him that he loved her.
And Mira could capture the wildest ocean storms, but couldn't weather the storm of an awkward conversation.
Precisely. They were masters of metaphor, but novices at reality.
So as we wrap up, it really leaves you looking at your own life, doesn't it?
It demands that you do. It demands you look for the silence in your own life.
We all have our own version of that rusted roof lighthouse, I think. A moment where the rain starts and we have a choice. Do we speak or do we run for cover?
And if you're currently standing under that roof, drenched and breathless, this story is a warning. The rain will stop eventually. The moment will pass.
But the painting, the note that says, I never had the courage, you don't want to be the one writing that note.
And you certainly don't want to be the one finding it.
So here's the provocative thought we want to leave you with today. Think back. Is there a lighthouse moment in your own past where you stayed silent? And if you could go back to that rusted roof with the storm crashing outside, what would you say?
Or maybe more importantly, is there a lighthouse moment happening right now that you're about to let slip away?
A huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this emotional deep dive into the cost of silence. It wasn't the happiest story, but man, was it necessary.
Absolutely. Sometimes we need the sad stories to wake us up.
Speak your truth, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.